What up, everybody, and welcome back to the Charter Podcast, presented by St. Xavier University. I'm Alex Shapiro, and with me, as always, is my guy, Clay Harbor, and we are talking Ben Johnson's introductory press conference. Ben Johnson met with the media today. We also heard from Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, George McCaskey, Caleb Williams. We're going to go over it all. But first, Clay, we got to start right off the top. What did you make of Ben Johnson's presence? How did he come across to you? Because a big question for us throughout this whole thing was, how is he as a leader? How is he commanding a room? We know he's a great play designer, a great play caller, but can he command that room? So what were your impressions of Ben Johnson at the podium today, Clay?
Man, I thought that he knocked this thing out the park. I thought my only real questions were, how could he respond in a situation where he's in front of a bunch of guys? And, NFL, I've been in a lot of locker rooms, and that's not for everybody. But to me, he's a guy that's confident, that's poised, that's in control, that has worked his way into the spot he's got. He knows he deserves to be there. And he's got that demeanor to where when he says something, he means it. So I loved everything I heard and saw from Ben Johnson in this press conference. It's exactly what I needed to see for me to be excited about him. Obviously, we know all the numbers, the analytics, how well he's done offensively through the past 3-4 years with the Lions. But today you got to see that he is a guy that can command a team, that can command the respect of an entire locker room. And you saw an intelligent dude. Like, just in that little bit of time, you saw confidence, you saw intelligence, and you saw a guy that talked about accountability and integrity. And that's what you want to. A guy that talked about work ethic, a guy that talked about being deliberate and intentional, all the things I wanted to see. So, Alex, I was excited. I know you were there in person. I was watching online. But everything that I had questions about, I felt like got answered today. So I'm really excited moving forward to see what he can do with this team.
Yeah, I want to underline one thing you said, and that was he seemed extremely confident to me today. In pretty much all aspects of the situation. Like he feels like I can do this thing. And that came across in a lot of ways. In one moment, so we had like a little off-camera session later on the record with Ben Johnson after the press conference. And somebody asked him, like, hey, every head coach has a little bit of confidence to make it to this point, right? You have to have a little bit of, I can do this really, really well at a high level. How does that come across for you? And he basically laid it out there. He was like, all three steps that I've talked about, and I believe he was talking about as a quality control guy, as a position coach, and an OC. I believe those were the three steps he was talking about. I believe I was the best in the biz at all three steps, point blank. I just think I was the best in the biz. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, here's the other thing. I know I had to do this the hard way. A lot of coaches maybe got a little fast track because they were a player. A lot of coaches, they got a famous last name. And it's like, oh, okay, Shanahan. Oh, okay, Kubiak. Oh, okay. All these other guys. He did not single out anybody. I'm thinking those names in my head.
Yes.
I didn't have a famous last name. I wasn't a player. I had to, when I was in Miami, we got fired. I was out on the street. I had to take a step back and rebuild my career. I have done this the hard way, and I know I do it at a really high level. So it was like, whoa, okay. Ben Johnson, confident dude. And if it's genuine, and I think this is what's going to be key, that authenticity, like that, if it's real, authentic confidence and it comes through, and it's hard to get a sense from a first impression. If that is authentic, I agree with you. I think that will come through to the players in the locker room, right? I mean, you were in locker rooms. Do players gravitate towards specifically confident coaches more than others?
Yeah, you heard Caleb talking about it. He's like, and in all things, we're talking about being sportsman-like here, but he's like, when we go on the field, we want to score touchdowns and we want to embarrass that defense. That's what Ben was talking about to him, how he wants his mentality to be. That's exactly how I want my head coach to act. The confident guys that know they're doing it better than everyone else, that really trust their system. Those are the guys who are successful in this business. And it can be quiet confidence. Some guys are a little bit louder, some guys aren't. But I think what I saw from Ben Johnson today was that quiet confidence, a guy that's not going to be out there yelling about how great he is, but knows, hey, I can do this. I can compete in this division. I wanted to stay in this division, even though I know it's the best in football. I know Dan Campbell. I'm going to compete with him. I know Kevin O'Connell. I'm going to compete with him. And Matt LaFleur, guess what? I beat you twice last year, and I want to beat you twice again. So I love that from him.
Yeah, he did. He got a little bit of the trash talk in there already, which I'm sure, people love. Right. Like that gives him a glimmer of it gives us a glimmer of insight into his personality that he's like already kind of trash talking in his intro press conferences. Among all of that, among everything, because it was a lot, what do you think was the most important thing he said today?
I think the most important thing that he said today is that he actually defined what accountability is. Because so often we hear people, we hear players, we hear coaches talk about accountability. People can look at it differently. People can even define accountability differently. But when he gave his example of what he has accountability defined as, he said accountability is do what we say we're going to do, be who we say we're going to be. And if we fall short of that standard, there will be consequences. And to me, that takes me back to the Bears season. When you got a guy turning his back to the team on the Hail Mary that turned around the season, when he leaves the practice the next day, when he finds out that he wasn't the starting cornerback anymore. You do that in Philadelphia with Andy Reid. You do that in New England with Bill Belichick. Leave practice. Oh, well, he was back for the team period. He only left for the individual. When you go to the locker room with those guys, here's what you do. You grab your keys, you take your bag, you jump in the car, and you drive to the airport because there were going to be some consequences, and the consequences will probably be you not on that team anymore. So I love that he said there's going to be consequences. And the other part of that I loved, Alex, was he said accountability is going to start with the coaches. It's going to start with me and the staff that I put together. And then from there, we're going to let the veteran players take over and they will handle accountability. And when you look at Detroit Lions, that's how they do things. Dan Campbell came in there and he brought his attitude and he created his system. He brought his attitude to Detroit. And when I was his tight end, when he was my tight end coach, you felt that in that room. The players, we took accountability of each other. If somebody wasn't playing up to the level we thought we should play, Dan would say something at first, but then next thing you know, the player's like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this. So that's what I love to see from Ben Johnson, the fact that it's going to start with the coaches, go to the veteran players, and he defined what accountability was. And I think with an accountable team, even looking back at this year, the Bears would have been in a much better situation.
Yeah, it was a team that was begging to be held accountable. It was a team that was begging to be coached hard. And he even said that specifically about Caleb Williams. He was like, listen, Caleb, you're immensely talented. Up and down season. You can't do it alone. I'm going to challenge you. Right? I mean, he just laid it all out there. I'm going to challenge you. And along those lines, because to me, Caleb Williams is everything, right? I mean, you obviously have to set that culture of accountability. You have to set that culture of the standard must be met. That's like a foundational thing. But for the franchise to go where this franchise wants to go, winning Super Bowls, Caleb Williams has to play at a Super Bowl level. He has to play at a Super Bowl caliber level, right? And to me, the most important thing he said was, I'm tearing this offense down to the studs, and I'm rebuilding it around Caleb Williams first and foremost, and then the other pieces are going to come next. It's not going to be a copy and paste from the Detroit Lions. Like, you've seen my Detroit Lions offense. I worked in Miami. It's not going to be those things. It is going to be building something around Caleb Williams, because that was another concern that we talked about on this show. Hey, Jared Goff does a lot of things really well in this offense, but it doesn't necessarily match up with the Caleb Williams skill set. Caleb Williams is capable of doing the things that Jared Goff does in that offense, but you wouldn't say that offense is built for Caleb Williams' skill set, right? Where's that match? Well, now we know. It's going to be totally new. It's going to be custom built, custom made just for Caleb Williams. So, I mean, that's pretty big. You were clapping your hands. I mean, obviously, it sounds like you loved hearing that as well.
Alex, yeah, you took my most important thing I heard, and I thought accountability was important. But to me, breaking it down to the studs and creating a new offense, not copy and paste. Because you know what we saw this year? We saw Shane Waldron think that, okay, I had an offense that worked pretty well with Geno Smith. And I think Caleb Williams is a guy that might have more talent and be better than Geno Smith. So my offense should work better. So now I'm going to try to fit Caleb Williams into my offense. No. That is not how you do things. You fit your offense into Caleb Williams, into the things that he does well. I'll go back to when I was with the Eagles, Andy Reid. My first year there, he's got Kevin Cobb playing. Kevin Cobb goes down. Michael Vick comes in. The offense didn't look anything at all like it did with Kevin Cobb, because Mike had different strengths. When I was in New England, you might have heard of this one, Deflategate. Tom Brady's out for 4 games. The offense did not look the same under Jimmy Garoppolo. Then Jimmy Garoppolo goes down. Jacoby Brissett's our starting quarterback. Offense didn't look like it did under Jimmy Garoppolo when Jacoby Brissett was running the offense. We were running some option stuff. They were playing to his strength. And offensively, that is such a big deal. You can't fit all these players into a specific offense, especially a quarterback, even a tight end. Dan Campbell knew, like, when I'm in the game, we're running this. When Colby Fleener's in a game, we're running this. We had different roles. You got to fit your player into the role and put him into the best place to succeed. Another one of my worries was, okay, this guy hasn't played with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. Is he going to be running the timing routes, the 3 and out, the 5-stepping out, the ton of play action with your back turned to the defense? No, he's going to spend time with Caleb, which he alluded to. Got to spend a lot of time with Caleb. He's got to see the game the same way. And then he's going to build off of what Caleb does well. So to me, Alex, you're exactly right. That was very important, knowing that he is going to put Caleb first in all his decisions with this offense. Love to hear that.
All right, so let's just spin that forward. In your opinion, what does the Ben Johnson offense built around Caleb Williams need to look like? You touched on it a little bit, but what does that offense need to look like?
Yes. Okay, so firstly, I want to go back to this because I think this is something that people have kind of overlooked. Ben Johnson does have a history of improving quarterback play. Jared Goff, in 5 years with the Rams, had a 91 passer rating, a 2.3 interception rate, while completing 63% of his passes. In 4 years with the Lions, now he has a 100 passer rating, a 1.8 interception rate, and a 68% completion percentage. Sean McVay is known as the greatest offensive mind in football. Sean McVay did not get the most out of Jared Goff like Ben Johnson did. Ben Johnson was able to get the most out of Jared Goff because he found out what Jared Goff did well. He found out he loves the play action. Okay, we're going to run a lot of gap scheme. We're going to do this. And both rosters were great. You can't say, oh, the Lions roster. The Rams went to the Super Bowl, and then the next year they won the Super Bowl. They both had great rosters. So he has proof there that he has done this before. What does the Bears offense look like with Caleb? We've seen Caleb loves to throw the ball on the move. We've seen Caleb does like some play action. We've seen Caleb does need to improve on some of his downfield accuracy rates, but you see he's a guy that can run his own read. You can see some of the things that he does well, and obviously Ben Johnson's got to improve some things, but he's got to let Caleb be a playmaker. Let him maybe have 2 plays. You go to the line of scrimmage, you kill one, nothing too extensive, and you go from there. You simplify things until you get him up to speed to run. Instead of having him try to learn trigonometry, sometimes you can get to the same answer by doing algebra. Let him do algebra until he's ready for trig. He can be a really dang good quarterback doing algebra. Okay, you don't have to have it too extensive here. So to me, you can dial some of it back. Obviously, you want him to go downfield, but get the guy in the move. Let him use his athletic ability out on the edges, using some play action, and that's what I'd like to see from Ben Johnson.
So how long do they spend on algebra? How long do they spend on trig? And then when do they go to differentiable equations?
Yeah, you got to start with the algebra. You got to start when you come in there. And then the thing is, they're going to be starting from scratch. I've been on teams that changed offensive coordinators, changed head coaches. So now Caleb's got to learn the shifts, the cadence, the motions. All of it's going to be different. The verbiage, different. The offensive line, even the protections. Some protections are called the same. Sometimes protections, the same exact protection is now called differently. So it's going to be a tough offseason. They should get to work on this yesterday. I mean, that's when they should start, because you don't get as much time as we used to, Alex. Back in the day, we're talking about OTA, 10 OTAs. There was just OTAs until you were ready for camp. Training camp, off days, you don't have all the time you used to. So you got to get started on it now, get in the book, start building that reputation. I know now there's rules that you can't even be in the building in the off season. Back in the day, I sound like a grandpa telling war stories. Back in my day, we used to stay in the building. But there are still ways you can FaceTime, you can Zoom, you can go, you can meet, and they should get started on this stuff right now.
Yeah, Ben Johnson did say they have started on his end, compiling, here are the things we think Caleb is really good at. Here are the things we think he needs to improve. He's like, Caleb might not know that we're working on this quite yet, but that work has begun, and I'm sure that they will relay all of those things to him sooner rather than later. Obviously, Caleb Williams is the big dude, but he's not the only dude. And Ben Johnson did commend Ryan Poles. That was another big question. How aligned is he with Ryan Poles? He commended Ryan Poles for basically saying this roster is stocked with talent. In addition to Caleb Williams, DJ Moore was present, Roma Dunze was present, and Cole Kmet was present at the press conference. So those are guys who are obviously invested, ID'd as cornerstone dudes. It's the cornerstone dudes we would expect. But then later he was asked, hey, who are the defensive guys? Since you were obviously offensive coordinator coordinating against the Bears defense, who are the guys that really stood out to you that kept you up at night? And he rattled off Kyler Gordon first, the nickelback. Then Jalen Johnson was like, yep, for 2 years, we pretty much never wanted to throw the ball his way. Then he said both the linebackers, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, commended their ability to like really react to a play and attack a play. And then he said, and this really dinged for me, and we're going to talk about it from two angles here. Defensive line not filled with stars, but played well together. But we did notice when Andrew Billings was out, because he's such a factor in the run defense. So the glaring omission there is Montez Sweat. And I'm not trying to hammer Ben Johnson on day one and really like be like, oh, Montez Sweat. But it did kind of ding for me that Montez Sweat was not in that list. I think it dinged for you as well. So I guess what do you make of all of that? The Ben Johnson and what he means for this defense now, because it's not just the offense that he is running. He's going to have to pick a defensive coordinator. He's going to have his fingerprints on that defense, just like Matt Eberflus had to have. He had responsibility for the offense as well. So I guess what do you make of all of that, Clay?
First, I want to explain how Ben Johnson's already seen so much film on the Bears. So firstly, obviously, whenever he's playing against the Bears, he gets to watch the Bears defense, right? He's game planning against these guys. So he sees the guys that are going to be problems. And then you give a scouting report and you say, okay, an offensive coordinator, you have the position coaches, you have guys on staff that will do this. You say, okay, this guy's a problem. This guy's a problem. We should be able to take advantage of these guys. This guy, okay, we're attacking him. This is a weak position for him. So he's played against the Bears defense. And then the flip side of that, when you are game planning, say, the Vikings or the Packers, the Lions watch the games and they break down all the snaps of the games. The Bears and the Lions had the same teams that they played against. So he's watching the Bears offense. And while you're watching the offense, same thing I did when I was a tight end, you see how other tight ends play, right? You go, okay, I like how this guy did this. I like how he ran this route. I think this guy, I'm not a big fan of this guy. What's he doing? How's he got such a big name? And I think he's actually not that good. So he got to watch a lot of Caleb Williams, a lot of the Bears offense, and see how they're doing when he's comparing his game plan towards what the Bears did and how they were able to be successful with it. So that's why he does know so much about this team already, not just because he was getting ready for this job or something. No, some of the Detroit Lions fans are going crazy. But I did think that him not mentioning Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter was telling. I think they didn't have great years, and he said the defense got leaky when Billings wasn't in there. So what that tells me is they're going to probably go after some depth. That defensive line position, they're going to get some depth inside. They're probably going to bring in another piece on the edge there because he knows what he was attacking. Who better to fix your defense than the guy that was attacking your defense and knows exactly where your weak points were? So to me, this is great. Obviously, Montez Sweat is going to have to pick things up. I know people want to make this excuse. He was injured. He was on the field, and he was never on the injury report. Tell me what his injury was. It wasn't bad enough to keep him off the field. He didn't miss practice. The guy should have been playing better. So he's got to be put on notice. Obviously, he's going to be here, but he's got to get better. I think they're going to improve the defensive line, and obviously he mentioned the offensive line as well. But I did think that was a glaring omission, Alex.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that's kind of an X factor is how is he as a timeout caller, as a game manager. This is something that he's never done before. And he basically said, listen, I learned a lot from Dan Campbell, and I learned a lot from Matt Patricia about how they did it. And he was like, my time in Detroit is where I really learned a lot about that. And what's also interesting is that he said that was a very unique part of the Bears interview process, that they ran scenarios with him. They'd put a score on the board. They'd run a scenario by him and just put him on the spot. Hey, what are you thinking right now? What are you telling your quarterback? And that was part of the interview. And he's like, yeah, no, that was unique. And I really enjoyed going through that. I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm just curious from your perspective, because again, until he does it, we don't really know, but are there ways you think we could get an insight into, okay, how is he going to be as a game manager? Is that something that you can assess before it's just like time to go? Because the mock timeout scenario thing, it's a cool idea. But will we know until we see it, Clay? What do you think?
You're not going to know until you see it, but he's a guy that calls plays from the field. So he's not a guy that has to come down from the booth and now he's on the field and he's figuring out how he's going to go on the field. And he did say this year when I came back and, I decided I wanted to go and make another run at this thing with Detroit. When I came back, I started putting myself in these positions, seeing how I would run things, how I would do things. So I feel like he's almost got like this trial run feel because he knew what was coming when he's going to be a head coach. So he does have some experience there. So I'm confident. And I mean, obviously you never know when the bullets start flying. Is he going to make the right decision and so quick? And is he going to have the right analytics guys in there? Was it him going for it on these fourth downs, or was it Dan Campbell that was the gambler? You don't know that. But I think from everything we've seen and heard from this guy, everything you hear from Mike Martz to John Shoup talking highly about this guy is very intelligent. He studied mathematics. He's a guy that knows things, that's an intelligent dude. And to me, that leads me to believe that he will get the thing right when it's time.
Okay. Let's talk assistant coaches real quick, because that's important as well. Kevin Warren basically said talent is everything in the NFL, and it's not just on the field, it's head coaching talent, and talented head coaches bring about talented assistant coaches, and that is important. You talked about how the assistant coaches setting the tone, with the position groups, et cetera, et cetera. Is there anything in particular you think the Bears need to be targeting with assistant coaches, whether that's scheme, whether that's experience, whether that's something else that I haven't just listed? And then just, does it matter if the next defensive coordinator runs a 43 or a 34 defense, or does that not really matter to you?
I mean, they're kind of built for a 4-3 defense. So they got a lot of cap, they got draft capital, they got a lot of cap space. So you could switch up a couple things, bring in some outside linebackers. I think TJ and Tremaine would be good inside linebackers with each system, but they're both guys that have run 4-3. So I think you want to stay 4-3. I don't think it's a necessity, but I think they got some intelligent guys in the defensive backfield, including their linebackers, that will be able to be successful in whatever defense you have. I thought it was interesting because one of the things he said when he was talking about Dan Campbell was the fact that he was able to delegate. He delegated well, and that's what he wants to do. he wants to be able to delegate fully to two guys, right? He's the offensive expert, and he knows he's going to run his offense. He said he wanted somebody with experience, and he's a young guy. So preferably somebody that has maybe head coaching experience. I know Dennis Allen's been thrown around out there. Maybe Ron Rivera. You bring somebody like that in to run the defense, I think you hit a home run. You want somebody you can kind of lean on when it comes to the program building as well. But you know that he says he doesn't know what type of defense he wants because he's waiting to sign the defensive coordinator. I like that. You got to be able to delegate to your lieutenants and give them the ability to call their own plays. In New England, was Bill Belichick in the offensive meetings? No, he was in the defensive meetings. Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady ran the offensive meetings. Andy Reid, was he in the defensive meetings in Philadelphia? No. He was in the offensive meetings, and he gave the defense when I was there with either Sean McDermott or Todd Bowles. Those guys were the defensive guys. You even go Jacksonville. Gus Bradley didn't know our formations on offense. He found somebody to delegate the offense to. Okay, so you have to find a good defensive coordinator, and you got to know what you don't know. And you got to be sure to interview and make sure these guys have experience, have done it before, have had success. And if you bring Dennis Allen in here, like there have been some chirpings, I don't even know if that's a word, chirpings, that he might be a guy that they could bring in here, I'd be really excited about that. I've been on staff. I've been on, not on staff, I played on a staff where Dennis Allen was the defensive coordinator in New Orleans. The guy's excellent. Obviously, as a head coach, leaves a lot to be desired. Got fired this year for a reason. But as a defensive mind, top 5, top 10 defensive mind in the NFL.
Is that where Dan Campbell was your tight ends coach in New Orleans?
Yep. Dan Campbell's tight end coach. Aaron Glenn was the defensive backs coach. Dennis Allen was a defensive coordinator. Sean Payton was a head coach. Yep. We had a wealth of guys there.
So it's interesting you mentioned that Dennis Allen was the only guy specifically that Ben Johnson was asked about, because there were the chirpings, as you put it. There were the chirpings about Dennis Allen. So he was asked point blank, like, yo, what's your connection? And you were there for that connection. He basically said, Dennis has worked with both Dan and Aaron Glenn. Obviously, he worked extremely intimately with both of those guys. He trusts those guys. So all he had to do was go knock one door down a few days ago. Now he's in Chicago. Now he's got to pick up the phone. But all he had to do was ask Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn about Dennis Allen to get a read on him. So we'll see whether or not he becomes the DC. But that is a little connection there. And Clay Harbor's connected. Clay, are you going to be the tight ends coach for the Chicago Bears if they come calling, since you're also connected to Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn?
Hey, if they called, man, I might have to leave you guys, or we can still do the charter. But man. I would be up for it. A little tight end coach. No. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
if you're watching this, Ben Johnson, my phone lines are open. Hit me up. I'll come and help with the tight ends, man, and we'll get this thing rolling. We'll get Cole met the ball before. He was formerly a tight end coach, obviously among other positions. So I hope that he'll get the ball to tight end a little bit more.
Wow, look at how ready Clay Harbor is to leave me and to leave us. He's like, I'll see you later. I'm gonna go coach Big Dog and Cole Kmet. Is there anything else, Clay, that you want to go over from this press conference? I have one little silly thing that I want to share, but before I get to that, is there anything else that you want to share about this press conference?
Yeah, I want to say that I like the fact that he said the quarterback success is a larger predictor of success than turnover differential. You know, that was another thing. It's just him knowing that the times have changed. It always used to be, every coach used to be turnovers. If we don't turn over the ball, we're going to win. He knows. Now, if you have a great quarterback, you look at the teams that are left. You got Josh Allen playing Patrick Mahomes, and arguably two best quarterbacks in the league. Obviously, Lamar Jackson has something to say about that. Could have won the game. You look at NFC wise. Okay, maybe Jalen Hurts isn't the best NFC quarterback, Jaden Daniels, but they're near the top. So you got to have good play from your quarterback. And that's something he came out and stated. Hey, turnover differential used to be the number one thing that you correlate with winning. Now what you correlate winning with is having quarterback success. I love that he knows that. And I think he's going to do everything he can to get Caleb moving in the right direction.
Love it. Okay. The only other thing that dinged for me today that really stood out to me is that Kevin Warren apparently has a pretty good handle on Yiddish, the Yiddish language. During his availability today, he said that the relationship between the Bears, the union between the Bears and Ben Johnson, was beshert, which, if you are a member of the tribe, Jewish, you've probably heard your grandparents or maybe your parents tell that about you and your soulmate, because it means you were meant to be, you were destined. It's
I
often
didn't know what that
referred to.
meant.
It's
Thank you,
typically referred to
Alex.
as like a soulmate, like it's in the
Yeah.
stars, I think, or something like that. And it was hilarious. My parents during my wedding talked about how my wife and I, we were beshert. So he was spot on. Not
Yeah.
only did he, it's kind of a Yiddish deep cut, which is like,
Mm.
oh, that's what displays, it's not like oy vey, mazel tov. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows those. That's a deep cut, beshert, and
Yeah.
he was spot on. He used it absolutely correctly. So I was like, whoa,
That's good.
Yiddish
That's
from
good.
Kevin Warren. Kind of love it. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see. We'll see if the Bears and Ben Johnson are actually beshert, or if it's going to be another name in a long line of names. All of that is not determined. It is to be seen. And the Bears certainly hope that they got this right, because if they got this right, if they got the guy and they have the quarterback, we talked about it, good vibes. It could be the beginning of a lot of very good football. The Bears believe it's beshert. We'll see if it was meant to be down the road. But, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic in Chicago. So be optimistic, Chicago. Enjoy the good vibes. So for Clay Harbor, I'm Alex Shapiro. Thank you, as always, for watching The Charter presented by St. Xavier University. Have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody.